We're live.
Shit.
Hey, what's going on, folks? Welcome back to the War Room Podcast. It's been a minute since we've had one of these, right? We're live streaming on the War Room Podcast and also the Green Beret Chronicles YouTube channel. Jake, if the folks don't know you, could you do a quick intro and let them know who you are?
Hey, I'm Jake Swig, United States Navy SEAL, former Division I football coach, pretty much a mercenary, have gun, will travel at this point in life, doing good things, mentoring a ton of people. We made two Marine Corps pilots on Friday, so we got about 15 more in the pipe, but we're still pumping out pilots, Jay. We're doing good things, man.
That's awesome. Ben, for those who don't know you, could you please let them know who you are and where to find you?
Hey everybody, great to be here. I'm Ben Pappas, retired Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel, Marine Raider officer, Force Recon officer, all that stuff. Played college football actually with Jake, so what he didn't say is also a Division I college football player and coach. So I played college football with Jake, great experience. And currently I'm an executive leadership and life coach as well, basically performance coach and strategist. I work with C-suite executives all the way to regular people, athletes, you name it. I've got a bunch of different programs. You can check me out though on YouTube. My YouTube channel is growing little by little, steadily, learning the ropes there. And then you can find me on Instagram as well too. So come on over and check out my stuff.
Yeah, and folks, the intent here is to hopefully establish a new battle rhythm, which is go live every Wednesday at 10 o'clock Eastern and run for about an hour plus. And we'll cover a variety of topics to include self help, political news, military news, etc., etc. I know some of the originals are already back in the chat. Happy to see us, I guess. I feel shitty, man, because it's like we started this thing and we want to hang out with them, but then the time as far as 6 p.m. on Friday, that shit was just crushing us. So hopefully, this new timeline works for everybody.
Yeah, this is good. We're good to go.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, we'll jump right into it, man, because we only have an hour. And folks, just like before, if you guys have any questions, throw it in the chat, and then we'll get to them as soon as we can. Aaron was supposed to be here. We're gonna call him out because he said he was gonna be here, but I guess he changed his mind. But it's all good, Aaron.
Hey, wait. You guys, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but you know that there is a new member of the Love family.
That okay. Hey, we don't expect Aaron to be here.
Uno Wico.
Oh, really?
Yeah, brother.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Shit.
No.
Yeah. Give him a pass. Yeah. I
Yeah.
gotta stand up from my man. He need a pass right now.
Yeah, man. That's not, he's in the land
Okay,
of no
Aaron's
sleep
probably
right now.
zoning right now. Yeah, he's probably zoning right now. So I completely understand, and congrats to you, Aaron. But yeah, let's jump right into it, man, because we have a couple of different topics to hit. But I want to get your feedback on this one, Ben, specifically because
Yeah.
Jake already gave me his 2 cents. Not too long ago, Pete have talked about firing fat generals and just bringing back good old order and discipline as far as appearance within the military. What are your specifically to the generals, man? Because when I look at generals, I'm like, yeah, they out of shape, but there's so much information stored in there. Like, what are your thoughts as far as him
Yeah.
threatening the generals?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, like I covered this in my live. It's on my channel. Just put out some shorts as well about it from that. But number one thing, first of all, okay, the best way to communicate when you are making organizational change is face to face and direct. So I will say it is the hardest thing to do. It's the most logistically preventative. And so, first of all, just first and foremost, I'll say what I said in my video too, is that hats off to him for doing the hard thing. If you saw this guy, Pete Hegseth's off script, okay, he probably had a memorized speech. Let's not, get it wrong here. And he's also a very experienced public speaker, but he delivered a powerful, very motivational. If you don't agree with everything he said, I'm not saying that, but first of all, I will say to me, he's showing respect by the level of commitment he had to that speech. So first of all, everybody went crazy, and it's so funny to watch on TV. And you guys know me; I'm politically independent. I'm not for any side really, for either side. I call it like I see it. So this isn't my Republican pitch or anything like that. It's just first of all, we all know when you go to speak to somebody, if you're off book, no notes, you had to have some dedication. You're showing them respect first of all by really being prepared, being professional, being enthusiastic. Next of all, he said a lot of things that, and I'll get to the generals in a second, but he said a lot of things I think that all of us were thinking for a long time in the military. You know what I mean? Like, he was talking about war fighting standards, all those things. There are some things I didn't agree with for sure. But the thing I saw in my research getting ready for my video is that I watched the whole thing twice and I took notes. He didn't say a lot of the things that people were accusing him of. Like, now, the big man, when the president came out, that's another ballgame. I'm not going to get into that, But, it's his job as the Secretary of Defense to call it like he sees it. He's supposed to set a standard. If he's trying to make cultural change in a place, he can't just be like, he can't be intimidated by these people. Because, mark my words, he retired as a major. You're facing 4 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 stars. Some of them know you and know your career. You don't think that this is nerve-wracking for him? But he's got to set the tone. He's got to take charge. And he had the chairman. He's had the chairman's ear. He's socialized this talk. He probably already has a lot of, wasta, so to speak, a lot of support for what he was saying. But I was saying, he's got to call it like he sees it. And if he's trying to enforce standards and these guys are out of standards and they're getting waivers, but they're expecting all the troops to be in shape. I mean, granted, you get injuries, you get older, it's harder, all those things. But if this is the culture he's going for, he's got to, from a leadership standpoint, he has to get in their face and say it. So no one can say, I didn't know, I didn't see it. Why are you moving slowly? I told you to be here at this time. And I was in your face, was I not? Did I not say this to you? Yes, you did. Now, there's nobody can say I don't understand. So I'm just saying from a purely performance leadership standpoint, I give him, A+ on that. Content of everything he said, I don't agree with everything. But, as a leader, good to go. And if there are fat generals, I don't know. I'm not in the space. But if there are, this is unacceptable. I'll tell you in the Marine Corps, I talked about this. There's a General Love. I'll never forget this. We're doing the combat fitness test. Don't you know this guy beat every single Marine out there? He beat every Marine officer, almost every Marine that was out there. He didn't beat me. I'll say that, okay? Because I'm just going to say, I mean, dude, I was 40, 39, right? I'm a senior major, and, it's coming off combat and all this stuff like that. And I'm like, I'll be damned if I let this guy beat me. But also, at the same time, what an embarrassment. He's like 55. He killed everybody. So that's what I'm used to in the Marine Corps. Marine Corps, I'm used to the commandant did 20 friggin' dead hangs. It's insane. I remember General Conway was doing like 20 dead hangs, pull-ups. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. The Marine Corps, as a big organization, we're not even talking about soft, right? Just talking about big organization, Marine Corps. It's a different animal, man. It's a different animal. So
Ben, I take
Jake,
it.
what are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Ben is standing on the fact that the Marine Corps said, "Oh, nothing's changed." Like that was the big kind of meme going around. Oh, Hegseth said no more fat generals, all this stuff. The standard is going to be the standard. And the Marines were like, yeah, we don't have to change anything. We never changed it in the first place. So
I saw that afterwards after I made my video, dude. And I was like,
yeah.
I mean, because honestly, I was like, because I heard from a lot of my old guys too. They'd be telling me stuff all along. And so, I thought he said a lot of things that many people were thinking. So
yeah. All right, so I got one thing to add, and I'm going to ask both of you guys a question. Have you guys heard what the other 3 hours of the speech was? Have you heard any details from the other 3 hours? So there was
the ones that weren't televised?
Yeah, the hour that we saw, but there was 3 hours before that.
No.
Okay, so one of the things that I think is interesting is how the houses, or the Democrats and Republicans, are fighting about just the dumbest shit in the world, right? And so they're trying to paint this whole organization as, I don't want to say racist, but like anti-DEI, anti-everything that was stupid, like all the dumb stuff that was causing division in this country. Well, I'm here to tell you, in the meeting, your boy Pete Hegseth asked the question, why are all the black Americans in supply? Why are they not on the line? And why are they not flying planes? And so when everybody sits here and tells me, like, I'm tired of all the rhetoric going around, there's a lot of crazy shit going on. My wife might lose her job because of the shutdown, all this other stuff, okay? I understand, like, Trump is out there on left field, but some of these changes needed to be made. And the other number I'm going to go back to is they are already done with recruiting in the Army like a month. Like, we're not even a full month into this first year. And they're pretty much like, they're getting ready to go back to old recruiting standards where no one got to pick a job. You just get to enlist. because they're so full right now on recruiting. So it's just crazy to me.
Now,
I
Jake,
get, yeah.
why do you think that is? I know Pete Hegseth posed the question to the generals, but being in that space as far as mentoring and coaching, why do you think that is?
I mean, it's simple, man. God, I tell everybody, man, if you gave me an M60, I could go double the size of the Army in 6 months. All I got to do is go to a high school and let a whole high school football team shoot the M60. I'll get half them dudes to enlist right now, right? Like men want to be men. They want to go to an environment where you can be a man and you got a gun and you get to get dirty and you doing tough stuff. Like, but for the last, I'll say 4 years, there was some craziness going on in the military. We're promoting LGBT and all this other stuff, and I'm not against any of it, but does that make a harder war fighter? Does that help us put warheads on foreheads? I'm gonna say no, it doesn't. So
Now,
I think
now as it relates to like the black the black community, do you think it's more parent based and it's more on the individual, or you think it's more recruiting or do you think it's just a cultural thing? Because for me, like most of the folks that I speak with, especially around the immediate area through coaching and mentoring, it always goes back to a cultural thing with me. Like, hey, mom and dad want me to do X, Y, and Z. So when I get out, I have a trade. They're not really looking to get into combat roles for the most part. Is that what you're seeing on your side also, or is it different?
so. I think it's a little bit of both, right? Like, why do the Filipinos run supply in the Navy? That's where all the Filipinos are, right? Like it's the chicken and the egg. But the argument I'm going to raise is I got 3 of the 12 black Navy SEAL officers I have wanted to be Marines. And they happened to be around a couple dudes that were trying to go SEALs that I didn't think had what it took. And so I pulled the 3 of them aside all at different times. This is like '06, '07, '10. And I said, hey, man, have you thought about being a SEAL? And in their minds, they didn't have the capacity to do it. All 3 of them dudes are '04s in the SEAL teams right now, right? Like, it's just one of those things that you got to be exposed to something you don't know nothing about. I grew up on Fort Lewis. Every one of my friends is mixed for the most part. We got 2 black dudes and 2 white dudes in the group, but everybody else is mixed. Japanese and black, Japanese or black and German, black and French, like everybody's mixed. But like we were exposed to the Army because everybody's dad was an E9 in the Army. So like Ranger Bat, I knew what Ranger Bat was, man. I didn't know first group was at Fort Lewis because there was no Green Berets in my group. But I was exposed to, we played in the Army Training Center. The Army Ranger on South Fort Lewis Fire and Movement course was our fire and movement course. So like when it came time to be like, oh, what's the Navy SEAL? They're like, oh, them special forces dudes. I said, shit, I'll go do that. Right? And I didn't know what I was talking about. But my point is I was exposed to it. And then I want to bring this back to another kind of social factor that's going on. Have you guys seen the guys in Memphis that are talking about how liberated Memphis is right now after Trump went in there with all the goons and ICE and the National Guard? So if you guys aren't tracking, man, there are like 5 or 6 kind of influencers down in Memphis, and they are singing the praises. They're like, for the first time in the last 25 years, I haven't heard gunshots at night. For the first time in 20 years, I've seen kids riding bikes down the street unimposed by crazy gangsters. And I'm like, But see, the other part of that, and I'm on a roll now, Chicago's getting $800 million to stop all the violence. That's why they're trying to stop Trump from getting in there and cleaning it up, because they're using $800 million from the federal government to surplus or support their budget. All right, I'm good.
Yeah, that'll be the next one. Now, Ben, what do you think as far as the MOS aspect of it, what Pete Hegseth was talking about, like Jake mentioned? Why is it as diverse in the combat arms based on your perspective, or like why do you think that is?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I didn't see that part of the speech. I watched the hour-long speech he gave twice. I didn't see the other couple hours. So I have really no take on that at all. And so I would say, I can base it off what I've seen personally. So, but really, I think Jake obviously has done his homework on that, and so I can just go off of what I saw from Pete Hegseth for originally what he's talking about, more of the big blue arrow strategic things that are going on in the Defense Department. And I think, he was talking about standards. He was talking a lot about standards and making sure that we're not using a political agenda to shape, the Defense Department. However, what I will say is this. So if you look at like Samuel Huntington, right, you look at basic civil military relations, and we look at, the fact that this is a democratic republic, right? This nation, we have to have our military has to, in a way, be a representative of what the country is. You know what I mean? It's and it has to be made up of that. But what that doesn't mean is that we lose military discipline, military order, military effectiveness, in order to be a social experiment either. So I mean, it's a fine line, and the mandate that his commander in chief has been given, according to the authority he has through the election, legitimacy he has through the election. These are really important things. He's been elected to do what he said he's going to do by his base and by the people that voted for him, and so now they're doing it, and that's hard. It's not easy. It's not easy to make change like this when it's been years and years and years of changing things. So, but I again, in the hour speech that I listened to, I didn't hear anything that was like, "Oh my God!" Or when people, I saw so many times people saying he said so many disrespectful things to these generals. I didn't think so. I mean, the one thing I would steer against always, just as it's a good practice that you don't bring up past leaders. Like when he started shaming General Milley, I didn't agree with that. I just think it's not. This is still a general, and you want to keep, if you want to stay politically independent as a military, don't politicize them. Don't start talking about. I mean, don't start doing political things like having rally type atmosphere, because then you might not like when they get political. Right now, it might suit you, but you just remember, and I'll say this like I said it before: the people who control the violence in this country, okay, not the people who have authority, but the people actually with the guns, right? I'm just saying, and again, this isn't any kind of revolutionary talk. I'm saying this is basic understanding of how you have a government, right? You have to have a monopoly on the violence, and the people who have the guns are the law enforcement and the military. So you got to make sure they are as much as possible, the military stays apolitical, stays rooted in the Constitution, stays rooted to service to the nation, and not to any one party, because you might not like where it goes. It might suit you today, but tomorrow it might shift. If you politicize the army, then the military, it's not good, man.
Ben, how hard is it to make a general? Because when I think of all these generals could just hand in their resignation, like what's the process and how tedious and how hard is it to get like a good freaking 4-star or admiral? Like how hard is that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes decades. It takes a long time, especially. So this is the thing I say. So, we talk about World War II, we talk about other centuries. It's not the same, because at the, flick of a switch, at one command, you can obliterate a city. You know what I mean? You kill a lot of people, destroy a lot of things, risk a lot of lives, blow a lot of resources. And so I think, you have to have someone that is tempered in wisdom and strength, decision-making. They've seen everything twice, 10 times. General Mattis said it really best. He said, he was asked during the Iraq War, how did you make that decision so quickly? He said, I made that decision after 30 years of experience. I've been preparing for that decision for 30 years, and I made the decision actually in about 10 seconds because I've seen it and been studying it for 30 years of preparation. So I think that's important. This is Napoleon would talk about the coup d'oeil. Coup d'oeil, like in French, means the cut of the eye. Jay, you speak French. So, I mean, the cut of the eye. He can see the battlefield with one take of his eye. Look across the battlefield quickly, and he knows where the critical point is. But that didn't happen overnight. It's not natural. It's not God-given. It's not It's not a talent. It's a developed skill that he did from rigorous studying campaigns, being on campaign, being in, so many battles. And so I think you can't replace that. Yeah, you're not going to have a general going to be the special operator, right? And, just let's not forget that you need doers. You need people that actually be door kickers and doers and the people that are going to execute the plan. But if the plan is screwed up, you're going to waste a lot of lives, a lot of time. The strategy is going to be bad. So I don't think they're easily replaceable. You know what I mean? I think we have a lot of them, but if they just all up and quit, yeah, I can't see that ever happening. But I think you can lose a lot of advantage, and it's a strategic advantage too, because if you can outpace your enemies, if you can outpace them through decision making and experience, then you have a huge competitive advantage. And the last thing I'll say is that you see that play out in the South China Sea, out in East Asia, in the oceans there, when they're dealing with China. China's admirals and their fleet commanders and their on the scene commanders of their squadrons, things like that, don't have the same experience our guys do, where they know how to bait you into something because they've seen it 10, 15 times. They've just, there's historical knowledge that's being taught. So, I think it makes a big difference. I think you can't easily replace them. You can change the training for them now, and you can, but they're very dynamic people. And that's why I'm saying, like, a speech from Hegseth like that, if he thought it's that important, his commander-in-chief thought it's that important for the direction they're going, then you do it. But that's, to me, that's the in the face, on the nose. I didn't find it disrespectful, and again, like they always say, no crying in baseball. I mean, you're in the freaking military. Come on, man. You got to adjust. And he even said, if you want to leave, you can leave. I mean, and there, I guess the vice chairman, who is it? The Air Force, yeah, he left, right? The next day, 4-star, like, left in the reserve. Nothing happened to him. He resigned, full benefits, and good on him. So, anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's just wild. But all right, well, I appreciate that one, guys, because I know it was something that was hot all of last week, and we didn't really. Well, we've been MIA for about a whole month now. Again, shout out to the chat, man. It's like we never left. All the ladies are in there. Drooling all over Ben, so shout out to you.
I'm about to say, Ben brought his crowd. Hey, real quick, I want to put one thing up, Jay. So, Ben, yeah. It's not a video. I got it from the back end. So, okay. Yeah, I got it from the back end. And there's some, hey, I'm telling you, get ready, folks. I'm just going to preface this now. We'll talk about it when it happens. There are some really big changes coming to the military. There's some really big structural changes that are coming, and it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be crazy, but it's going to be a lot of goodness from our standpoint.
That's cool.
Yeah, looking forward to it. All right, so we'll hit this next topic. This one is unfolding right now as we speak, and that is the Hamas Gaza Israel peace agreement, right? Phase 1 is complete. They've released approximately 20 hostages. And right now, there's a ceasefire. Humanitarian aid is going into Gaza. Hamas is not shooting at anybody. They're essentially getting ready to get disarmed. And we've all been there and we've all seen it. So I'm just sitting with my popcorn and watching what's gonna happen, right? But we'll go with our resident Jew on this one, right, Jake? Like, what's
let me get some. I got to go pick my wife up here, but I'm gonna drop this bomb on everybody. Okay, so first of all, Hamas executed somebody yesterday live on whatever, like, social media they got over there. All I'm gonna say is, at this point, 2 years into this shenanigans, I completely agree with France and everybody else that Netanyahu, have you guys seen the plane track of Netanyahu when he came to America, how he had to fly all around Europe because they all have arrest warrants for him? So he had to fly, like, across the Mediterranean and then through the Straits of Gibraltar to get to America because everybody told him that we're going to arrest you if you come through our airspace. Like, I think at this point, like, stopping aid to Hamas, listen, man. It's 10 million people. It's just straight genocide. You got kids starving to death over there. I'm glad it's over. Okay, it hasn't been over in 75 years, but I'm glad it's over. I really wish. I mean, you know me. I live outside in the world. Outside the box. I wish Trump would have took it over and dropped like 400 Trump towers and turned that part of the world into like Mecca. You know what I mean? Like, just turned it into, like, greatness. Because I don't think...
Careful. Now, I think the other people have plans to turn it into Mecca, too.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes I get lucky with my choice of words. But I just think that, like, first of all, there'll never be peace there as long as the Israelites are there. Never going to be peace. And I just think at this point, like, they killed 1,800. We killed, like, 1 million. The Jews killed 1 million over there. So I just don't think... I guess part of it to me, this is the thing that shakes me as a resident Jew, okay? After the Holocaust, Why would you ever inflict that type of damage on another person? Right? After, like my Aunt Sarah, after my Aunt Sarah survived the Holocaust, how can you look at another group of people and be like, oh, let's go over there and commit genocide? So, kind of where I stand.
Yeah,
I
that's an
think it's
interesting take, man, because as I read like the articles that are coming out, oh, it's finally happening. Trump gets the Nobel Peace Prize, peace in the Middle East. I'm like, bro, nothing's changed. The ideology hasn't changed. Um, Hamas is still there. The area is pretty much destroyed, right? I was like, you killed 1 million. You probably created about 2 million freaking insurgency once they become of age. So it's like,
Yep.
what exactly has been accomplished? And that's just phase one. Phase two,
Yeah.
they still got to get Hamas out of there and relocate them and instill a new government. What are your thoughts on all of this, Ben? Like, what do you see happening
I
here?
mean, my understanding just from what I saw from one of the officials in Gaza had said that they killed 10% of the population. They killed, he said it was 250,000. So somewhere between there and 1 million, from what Jake's saying. Again, who knows what the figures are? You hear different figures all the time. But so I just watched this the other day. That's why it's fresh in my mind. But he said, imagine if 10% of your population was killed in the United States. He said, imagine how you would feel, how you'd react. And his point was not that, his point wasn't about, we need to continue the war. He was just saying, to your point, Jake, that this is phase one. We have a stop, and it's good. We have a stop right now. But if you saw, Hamas just went and executed collaborators like this morning or yesterday. That's why Jake and I are both raising our fingers up. They executed these people in the street for collaborating. And this is supposed to be a peace deal. And as soon as they announced it, they wanted to go show off and show their muscle, and they went back to the streets with armed people, armed men. To show that, okay, yeah, we have this peace deal, but we're not, we're still in charge. We're still going to have a presence. So I think the hardest thing is we can get to the negotiating table, and honestly, hats off to President Trump. Again, I'm not, like I always say, I'm politically independent, but from what I understand, what I've read and seen, he had a major thing to do with this because of his force of personality, frankly, and I think they also know. So one, they respect him and fear him, one. Two, he's transactional, which plays into it. He knows that they have to get something. You can't just be like, disarm and go away and it's all over now, and we're going to have peace. Now he knows that they have to get something, and he's a deal maker. So I think they respect him as a pragmatist, right? He's pragmatic, he's practical, all those things. But now we have to actually make it stick, and that means implementation. So when things are late, if people are late by a deadline, by a day or two, or they say that no more armed patrols in the streets, and yet they do it again, right? That's like Russia. Russia invading, going into NATO airspace with armed drones and with, attack aircraft. And so, at what point do we do something, right? And it's the same thing. Who's going to actually enforce this peace? How long is it going to last? Unfortunately, then it comes to logistics. How much money, resources? This is where I agree with Jake. Jake is not kidding to make the Mecca. Honestly, if you did create it's supposed to be very close to some beautiful areas if you could have it cleaned up and have it peaceful. If you made this into have a tourist industry, people have jobs, and we learned this through Iraq and Afghanistan. When people can support themselves, they have jobs, they have a viable survival strategy outside of violence. It's like gangs, the same thing. They're less likely to do these violent things and fall for these, the ideology of poverty, the ideology of the oppressed. This is where we fall into terrorism and all these things like that. So, Jake's not wrong, right? He's 100% right on that.
I think it's a story.
So
Yeah, I think it's a story as old as time, because if you look at, like Haiti and all the gangs that are going on down there, it's like, and one of the biggest gangs is like literally from the neighborhood that I grew up in. And I
Wow.
can't help but sit on this side of things and wonder if my folks didn't get me over here in time, like I would have been one of those guys, because at the end of the day, like what choice do they have? It's a impoverished country, and you have the youth growing up with no purpose. And the gang members are the ones paying and have all the money and have all the power and have all the respect. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to sit here in the United States and judge when you don't, like, we're not going through
Yes.
through the same thing. You know what I mean? So
Right. When's the
yeah.
book coming out, Jay? We gotta, forget all these David Goggins and Remy Adeliki and all these people. Jake's got the from gangland, war torn, to more battle to a multimillionaire.
That's 2026. Man, 2026.
All
That's
right.
why we got to get off here by 11 plus, because I got the lady that's writing the book. She interviews me every Wednesday to make sure that everything
Nice.
goes right, because
Well,
I don't know
pre-order
how
today,
to.
everybody. Pre-order today.
That's actually coming too.
And then Jake
So
and I are going to play main characters.
Shit, hey, you know my role, man. I'm a good support dude because I break shit.
that's that's all we need. Jake, I know you got to punch out, so we'll hit this one next before you go. Because I'm always curious about this one, mainly because like I'm raising boys, and I know Jake has a little one, and Ben, you have older ones, so feedback will be pretty good here. So when it comes to raising men, especially from like like a young kid to adult, like what are some of the things you guys are doing? Like at what age, I guess, do you pluck them from their mother and essentially make them yours and start grooming them to be men? Is it like 7 years old, 6 years old, and you start grooming them? Like how do you guys go through that process? And we'll start with you, Ben, since yours are older, and then we'll hit Jake.
Well, okay. And I was going to say, Jake, if you want to hit it, because I know you got to go, man. So if you want to go first.
Oh yeah, I'll
go
hit it
ahead,
real
Jake.
quick.
Sorry.
So
Yeah.
I'll say this, Jay. I got something hilarious to tell you guys, but I'm gonna start with I don't know if there is an age, right, where I took them from their mother, because I always had them. And so one of the things that I started to do maybe 5 years ago, we were in Illinois, like we're doing chores. Okay, we got 3 goats now. They got to feed the goats in the morning. Chores. We cut trees for 2 weeks this summer. Middle of summer vacation, we cut trees for 2 weeks, right? Ran chainsaw, cut trees. They drag trees 6 hours a day. The first couple of days were tough, and then everybody lined up, and I got one work dodger, okay? And he's always gonna I put him in charge, and he does okay. So here's something I'm gonna tell you guys that happened to me this weekend. So I got fired as the YMCA youth flag football coach. Okay.
No.
How do you get tired?
I can only imagine. We were going back to Illinois, Maryland, going Division I style.
So here's the deal, right? The director called me yesterday and was like, "Hey, we have these reports of you saying all this crazy stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, what do you got?"
No surprise there. No surprise.
No surprise, right? I was like, I said a couple things, but I didn't drop any curse words, right? Like I do really good at YMCA. So he charged me with a bunch of crimes. I said, "Hey, I'm just going to tell you this. I didn't say any of that stuff. I don't know where this came from." He's like, "Well, we confirmed it with 5 different sources." And I said, "Hey, man, listen, am I fired from the other 2 teams I'm coaching?" He's like, "No, like you're doing great over there." I said, "Don't you think it's kind of odd? I'm coaching 3 teams and 2 of them are great and 1 of them's bad." He said, well, I corroborated everything. So I said, whatever. It's YMCA. I ain't worried about it. I get fired. So all my kids heard the conversation. And so then my youngest son, who was always the antagonistic, was like, "Dad got fired. Saying crazy stuff in practice." Like, ah. And I was like, wait a minute.
He loves you. He's proud of you.
Yeah,
He's like, this is
yeah.
the best. Yes.
Yeah. So the oldest 2 come home after the youngest one. And so then my wife asked the oldest one. He was like, "Dad didn't say that. That was X. X said that." And so then I was like, he said it. He's like, "Oh, yeah, he said this, he said this, he said this." Everything that the dude said I said came out of the 12-year-old's mouth on the sidelines. But the parents, who were all pissy about the whole thing, said I said everything, okay? Yeah. So I picked the phone up. I called the guy. I said, "Hey, bud," I said, "here's what happened. I want you to know I'm a United States Naval Academy graduate. I don't really lie. Okay, I have lied, but I don't, not in this situation. I have been doing a great job over the last 3 years coaching the YMCA. I don't drop no F-bombs. I don't lose my mind." I said, "So you're firing me over something that a 12-year-old said. I appreciate that, but I just want you to know I didn't say any of it." And so when we got off the phone, I brought my kids together, men, and I said, "Hey, man, sometimes in life you're going to get fired for no fault of your own." And I said, how you handle it is the only thing that matters. And, like my middle son was like, "Let's get the guns." I said, "God, dog, bro." Like, I said, it's the YMCA.
Man, I would not want to be tangling with these WAG boys. I would not want to be tangling with these kids.
So I'm making them go outside. after this game, I lost my mind because there was softness. So we went outside for 4 hours. We played all the way to 8 o'clock in the night. So they were outside for 6 hours after sports on Saturday. And so he shot guns for 4 hours of that. We got a little shooting range in the backyard. He shot for 4 hours. But my point is, all three of them asked questions about getting fired. And I said, listen, man, you're going to get fired in life. It happens. I said, but, we don't care. I said, do the wolves talk to the sheep? And then they all like lit up in their seats and they're like, no, the wolf never talks to the sheep. The wolf doesn't listen to the sheep. The wolf eats the sheep. I said, that's right. And then we went on about our day. So
that's a great lesson, man. That's a great one.
know,
but I'll tell you, I had a similar experience, Jake. And it's funny, but I had similar. It's just, and we'll get into answering the question, but no kidding, flag football, same thing. And we're going through, I can't remember if we won or lost, or but same thing, dude. Flag football, and I had kind of like the little football dynasty of like tackle football to flag football, same crew for a couple of years. We won a lot, all this stuff, and so all of a sudden I get an email from this crazy mom. Now the mom's got a lot of influence because she has like a couple superstar sons, like literally like mind blowing performance in high school. I'm like that. You said this to my son. I'm like. So I call my commissioner. Luckily, he had my back. He's like, no, I know this person. They just will, freak out on somebody. But someone said I said it when another coach said something to someone else somewhere else, and somehow it was me. I don't know how that works, but same thing. It was like totally unjustified. I was just lucky because the commissioner's like, yep, nope, send it to me. I'll deal with it. And that was the end of it, luckily for me. But, dude, people get nuts in the little league sports. Parents get wacko. So when do I take them from my mom? Well, that was at age 7, as per Spartan tradition. I took them away into the mountains, and I made them go and hunt wolves barefoot with spears by themselves. No, same thing. Jake said it. Jake hit it really well. I mean, you gotta keep the balance, and I think it's just like those everyday lessons, the small little things, and realizing too that. You do the absolute best you can. And sometimes they're going to make decisions that wouldn't be the decision they've been trained to make or that they've learned. And they got to learn their lessons, the hard way. So that happens too. And I think as a parent, you've got to realize that it's a choose your own adventure story. And at some point, they may choose an adventure. So, you want them to go linearly to their target and to succeed. But sometimes to get here, you're going to have to go like this to end up there, right? It's not just a straight shot sometimes. But then when they get up there and it sticks, I mean, the biggest thing, I always think is development of character, development of self-worth, as much as you can, hard work, no substitute for hard work, making up for mistakes, all those things like that. And that's an everyday thing. I think obviously some big events can help. And Jay, you and I both went through the thing, but I had 2 sons when I was going off to combat. You know what I mean? One of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, and it still sticks with me, is seeing my oldest son when I'm leaving for a combat tour that I might come back from, and having a talk at the time, with his mom and also with him, and just saying to myself, I got to come back to this, but I might not, and if I don't, move on and live a good life. And so like how do you do that? That was probably one of the hardest several times, having to do that with my kids. And so I think in that are lessons as well too, because sometimes we're committed to things. You got to keep your word, and you got to go, and you got to do things that you might not come back from. And so I think knowing what your values are, what things would you die for, And so I'm going in a lot of directions here, but really I don't ever think you just actually take them from their mom, because their mom's a big part of their their world, unless. Either way, if you got a dad that's nuts or the mom that's nuts, I mean, then you got to intervene. But if the person is doing their utmost to be a good parent, then parents aren't perfect either. And so that's why I really like what Jake was saying about it's the daily little lessons, it's the daily struggles. It's not always some big event. And Jay, you know it well too. But that's my take on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there. I really appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys sharing there. Now, would any of you guys ever raise your kid to be identical to you, like to replace you, or would you change a couple of things here and there, Jake?
Jay, okay, we had this conversation. Okay, I'm going to tell you, I am really close to my dad. Okay, I am incredibly violent. I don't give two shits. I'm gonna win, and if I destroy everything around me, I'll be standing as the victor. Okay, we had this conversation because I tell my kids every day, I'm raising you to be 10 times better than I am. And to be better than me, you cannot have the faults that I have. You cannot instantly go to violence, right? Like I talked to my middle son about it. You can't instantly go to violence when something goes wrong. Okay.
How do you find that balance though to make sure that they are just as aggressive and or successful as you are, but they still have the I guess the good side of you also, right? Like
So
I'm sure it's a fine line that you got to manage.
so we're gonna go to wrestling for 3 months, right?
Hmm.
And I don't really have an aggression problem in my family because when they like when you see them interacting with other kids and the other kids are cowering, like you're like, I like the kid jumped in the pool. My 10-year-old jumped in the pool with a big kid and was giving him the business in the swimming pool. Right? Like to the point where I was like, hey, come here, man. Do we wrestle in a swimming pool? We have a rule. We don't wrestle in a swimming pool, right? They're not old enough to wrestle in a swimming pool yet. And so I, as my wife says, like there's enough of me to rub off on them every day that soft isn't going to be made. Right? Like I know that. There, no matter what I do, I can't raise soft kids. So, but I also don't want to raise kids that are on this, like I call it the 50-50 train. 50% of the people love me to death, and 50% of the people hate me. And it's hard to be really successful when you have 50% of the people that you're involved with always trying to, circumvent and mount your destruction. It's a lot easier if you're in that like 90-10 range where you got 90% of the people just think you're a good dude and 10% of the people don't necessarily like you, but it's not on the hate scale. So that's what I'm trying to balance. And like I talked to Ben, I've talked to you, Jay, right? I talked to my boy Tommy Neville that has older boys. Tommy Neville has 7 phenomenal kids, right? And when you talk to him, he's like, it's everyday struggle, Jake. He's like, some days you're going to win, some days you're going to lose. He said, you got to have more winning days than losing days. I talked to Ben about some really, personal issues. And Ben was like, hey, man, here's how I handled it. You got to look at the product they have. And then you'd be like, all right, like, but I like, I got a band kid, man. And even the band kid is killing it. So
Nice. Nice.
That's awesome.
Ben, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think to make them just like me, I think the biggest thing is, I think really, so I believe this. So in my own personal philosophy, right, ferocious optimism. This is what I teach to my clients. I teach to my coaching membership, my community, and all those things. And so it starts with the basic belief that we each have this unique personal genius, this something inside of us that is special, that when we develop it, we bring it out, and it's going to take a lot of hard work. You can bring your highest and best self to the world to serve the world at your best, and also serve yourself. And so the thing for me is it's all the hunt and to figure that out. So, they got to go with what they're curious about, what they're interested in, what they're, and I always say, honestly, I don't say, are you happy? To me, happiness is fleeting. There's joy and satisfaction, flow state, inner peace. There's the feeling of accomplishment and self-trust. To me, happiness is always fleeting. So I don't tell my kids, I just want you to be happy. No, I don't honestly, happiness is not something I talk about much but I talk about inner peace. I talk about flow state, when you know that you're using all of your talents and abilities and your skills, and you're getting lost in time and losing track of time because you're working really hard and you're growing and you're learning and you're challenged, all those things like that. And so for me, I say you each have aspects of me for sure, but you're not me. And so if you want to follow my path, that's great. But this path worked for me for better, for worse. I made my decisions and I did what I did. But, I really, I try less to emphasize, about the me in them, and that the them in them. You know what I mean? Like the special qualities they have. And along the way, obviously, I'm always going to be a present in their lives, and they see me and what I've done and who I am, and they know that's a part of them. And especially they look like me, things like that. And so, but I want them to do the work and go through the struggle. And sometimes it's not easy. And I'm going to tell you, sometimes the world will think you're losing, okay, as an individual, that they'll think that, as a kid, if you're in the kid spot, they'll think that you haven't made it yet, or you're behind, or you fell down, but really you're still in development. You're on your way to where you need to be. And even as a parent, parents get competitive in the sports and everything. How's my kid doing? And they put them in these things. It becomes like a parent ego trip. How are they performing? Are they hitting the most home runs, scoring the most points? Are they winning the most matches? Are they scoring the most touchdowns? Blah, 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 blah. But it's not realizing that it also takes a toll on the kid. And, I think it's just the kids have to go through their adventure. And even if they find themselves at, 21 not knowing what they're going to do or what the direction is, you're still 21. It's okay. You know what I mean? Like, I saw this today that impressed me. Grant Cardone posted this, and he said Warren Buffett made 99% of his wealth after the age of 50. And his point was this: so stay in the game and keep learning and growing. And granted, Warren Buffett's incredibly wealthy, but I'm saying if you can have that big of an upside that late in life, you're not out of the fight. Stay healthy, stay strong. And this is like what I talk to my kids about. I'm like, sometimes people got to learn the hard way too. So I'm careful for that, because I think in our effort as parents to, get them on the right track, make sure that they're on the right path, no mistakes, because God knows what people will think of me as a parent. I won't look good. Check yourself. A lot of this shit's going on in people's minds. And so instead it's you have to do your journey. You have to go through your journey. And this is the vision quest, honestly. And there's going to be pain, there's going to be suffering, there are ups and downs, but this is your life, and one day you're going to friggin' die. So you better live it, and you better live it fully, the way you think you need to. And obviously we want to equip them as much as we can and teach them why certain values are better than others, right? Like, taking care of yourself, taking care of others, service to others, responsibility, honor, courage, commitment, all those things like that. And also, last thing I'll say, the art of the comeback. You're not down and out. What happened yesterday, your yesterday does not define who you are going to be tomorrow. Okay? You can learn the lessons, you can grow, learn, overcome, and become something totally new and reinvent yourself and rise up like a phoenix. So I really believe in that as well too.
Absolutely. It's all really good things, man. Like, I'm just trying to, it's almost like a dance, right? I'm like, yep, I don't want you to go too far left, too far right. I got to get you right in here, but make sure you're happy. Make sure you're smiling every day. Make sure you're still a kid, but I can't let you stray too far to the left, too far to the right, to where you make some crazy decision, man. So I tell you what, I still wouldn't, to everybody out there watching that, or, raising kids or thinking about having kids, like, I still wouldn't change the fact that I'm a father for anything. It's still probably like the most difficult job, but the best job in the world at the same time, right? Like, I
100%.
wouldn't change it for anything. But yeah, we'll close up on this one, Ben. Government is shut down. Like, what advice would you have for, this is more like financial advice, because I've been through 3 government shutdown, and I'm sure you experienced it throughout your time in the military too. Of course, I always prep for it on the front end, but what advice would you give people right now that are struggling, that didn't prep adequately financially to be able to survive this, or ones that do have a little bit of nest egg, but they might end up running out? Like, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, so just like entrepreneurs, you have to run your family, run your life, your expenses like a business. And if you see this happening, this is the time when, you really have to cut back on expenses. You got to be, very smart with not adding to your expenses, right? You got to check your credit accounts, check your bank account, check your credit statements daily. If you can cut back things or cut them out, that's good. I do know that certain financial institutions like USAA is giving interest-free loans to support people. I understand the government will give back pay in most situations. So, I think that's important. But you really got to look at your income versus expenses and look at your expense sheet. And, as much as you can, protect your credit. If you're living paycheck to paycheck and you don't have a reserve, then maybe try to seek funding from one of these institutions that'll give you an interest-free loan and float you from a little while. But what this is in the rearview mirror of all this, when this is over, you really got to look at. We got to go all Dave Ramsey, right? We got to do the Dave Ramsey. First of all, as much as we can, get out of debt. Okay, reduce the high interest credit card debt first, and then start saving up. Your first month of expenses. Try to get to 3 to 6 months of a reserve. Once you do the 3 to 6 months of reserve, you're debt free. You're able to pay off your credit cards every month. That's going to also take a lot of work on your part to look at what you're spending, what your budget is, and then start investing. You got to start investing, right? Start investing so you can grow your way out of it, and have the asymmetric upside. I'm a big believer in crypto as well too, particularly Bitcoin. Not all the other BS, not all the other not a little small coins, things like that. But Bitcoin, Ethereum, really Bitcoin for me, and that's down the road. Once you clear the credit card debts, you get a budget, clear the credit card debts, get your 3 to 6 month cushion, and then start really investing. But that's a plan for afterwards. But just for right now, again, I came from a family of entrepreneurs too, and I remember my dad would say it. He said, "When business is low, it's time to tighten the belt." And I'll say it, Donald Trump, our own president, said. I used to read all his business books before he was president, and he goes, "When times are good, pay down debt." I'll never forget that. I read that from him probably 20 years ago. He said, "When times are good, pay down the debt because the bad times are coming." So just know you're in a cycle right now. It's going to get better. But remember this for the future. And when you're making some money and you're like, okay, do I pay off that car? Do I pay it on the credit card? Oh, I take the vacation. I go, I'm telling you, know that winter is coming again, like they say in Game of Thrones, right? So that would be it, Jay.
Shout out to Joe Saunders with a super chat. All too true, Ben. I would tell my kids, my past is not your future, meaning you are going to have to chart your own course after a certain point, right? And all you can do as a dad is essentially prepare them for what's to come. And dude, that like every day I wake up and I'm like, man, how do I prepare my son to slay that dragon that is life, right? Because again, as men, we've done life, we've experienced life, we know how brutal life can be, and it's like, man, like how do I get my kid all the tools that he needs to crush life without taking away all the necessity of being a child? You know what I mean? So like I said
Yeah.
earlier, it's a fine dance that we have to figure out.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt about it. But
Yeah.
appreciate everybody being here today. It's great having you guys switch it up with us in this new time, new place.
Oh, absolutely. Peaches. Peaches is in the chat. Welcome, Peaches. We appreciate you. But yes, guys, the intent, myself, Ben, and Aaron, is to make this the new battle rhythm every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll jump on here for about an hour and speak with you guys. All right. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you share the word. I know I meant to throw it on Instagram. I don't know if Aaron's busy, so he probably didn't put it on the War Room podcast
Yeah, I
page.
put it on there.
Okay, yeah. So that's the intent, guys. We appreciate you guys. Ben, any last words before we punch out of here?
Yeah, hey everybody, come on over. Just subscribe to my YouTube. You can go ahead and find me on there if you're not subscribed already. I'm going live right now. Usually, occupying the old War Room slot at 6 p.m. on Fridays right now, and then Sundays at 4 p.m. So I go live twice a week. And so go ahead and follow me over there. And there might be a switch, like once a month. I might switch to a Thursday from this point forward. But Fridays at 6 p.m., Sundays at 4 p.m. And thanks for everyone coming over, and good to see some of the regulars out there as well.
Absolutely. And then, yes, Peaches, this is the normal spot. All right. But yeah, we appreciate you guys. And then we'll see you guys next Wednesday.
See you, everybody.
All right.